Okay, hello and welcome back to the Online Citizens Politically Speaking. We are covering the election, the Singapore General Election 2025, and bringing to you interviews with many of the political candidates who are standing for election. My name's PJ Thum, and I am here today with Marcus Neil of Red Dot United. Hi Marcus, thanks for coming on the show. So why don't you tell our audience, you're a newcomer to politics, so I don't think many people know who you are. So would you like to tell our audience a bit about yourself first?
Okay, I'm Marcus Neil. I'm representing Jurong East, Bukit Batok GRC with Red Dot United. I'm in my 30s. I run a digital marketing agency for law firms. And I think many people will be interested to find out why I got into politics. So I was never interested in politics from in my 20s or even my teens. I rather focus on business because I came from quite a humble background and it was natural for me to seek out financial success. So what drove me into politics was actually events that happened 5 years ago. I feel that certain legislations were pushed through in Parliament without considerations of different segments of society. So that actually got me interested in politics. But that was not quite enough. After certain experiences in the workforce as well, and recently I got engaged with my partner applying for BTO flats after a couple of failures and experiences in the workforce. Then I really found out that there is a lack of certain safeguards or legislations, if you will, in Parliament, and that is how I got interested into opposition politics.
Okay, yeah. Which legislations? You mentioned certain legislations that you were very upset about.
So, for example, if you guys didn't know, there is not the legislation between. How do I phrase this? There is a lack of legislation when it comes to safeguarding employees' interests. For example, there is no legislation saying that you can't extend someone probation period forever and ever. And I think that some companies may use it to manage someone out.
Right.
So there's nothing to say that, for example, if you're an employee, I can just, just extend your probation forever.
Okay.
And if you are not a full-time staff, I think for certain companies, you are not entitled to the bonus. Yeah. So that is how some, it may be misused in that sense in the workforce. And there's imbalance.
It's really interesting. I think these are very, very specific examples. Were you an employee? Did you experience problems because of the lack of protection for employees?
So I would say I would have a very close first-handed experience with whatever I just mentioned. Of course, I cannot say with full, right? But yeah, I had quite a close-up experience. And well, this is opinion-based. I felt that I did well. There were numbers behind it. And actually, my case I actually mounted a legal challenge. Yeah, it was very interesting. Okay. And I went through the whole process, and I have to give props where there's deserved lah. I went through TADM, which is a government-related body. And I think they did pretty well. They are quite a good agency, and they advised me quite well, and actually gave me a claims certificate to go to the state's courts. So it's actually quite a legal process, and you do all of that without a lawyer. Right, because this is just the rules of the game. Okay. If you mount a wrongful dismissal challenge, the other party doesn't have the ability to hire a lawyer, and you don't have the ability to hire a lawyer. So it's just you versus whoever, the HR or whoever. So I actually went through that process. It was actually quite daunting because I'm not legally trained. Yeah. And I was just normal, ordinary Singaporean lah. No legal background, just feeling very frustrated after months and months of frustration, if you will. And I actually went through with it, and I had a pretty favorable outcome, surprisingly. And I did everything without a lawyer. That means the submission of documents, legalese. I mean, with the stage of AI, I was quite comfortable using AI. So I used AI to actually wrote my claim statement and all of this to help me with all the legalese speak, if you will. And I collated the evidence. I had the numbers on me, and it was just last minute, that I filed that case, because even when I'm just a normal guy, right? I talked to my parents. I say, should I go through with it because it's a legal case, right? It's so stressful, and I spoke to even like opposition leaders. I mean, I cannot name who lah, right? I actually consulted like people in the opposition and community, and even they say like, yeah, cannot win one lah, this one lah, you sure lose one, you sure die one, waste time, don't bother, move on, find a better job. Yeah.
Right. But you won.
Yeah, I had a favorable outcome, but I didn't want to file. It was just last minute.
Okay, so this experience then, you're saying it's definitely not something that you want other people to go through, and that is really the core of what, or the first thing you mentioned, the certain legislations or lack of protection for workers that pushed you forward into politics, that made you realize that that there is just not enough there to take care of the ordinary worker.
Yes. I mean, the employer, in that sense, it has too much power.
Right.
And I think it's also cultural issues as well. It was a foreign HR department,
Okay.
and foreigner field like I mean, my superiors, like quite a number of them were not from Singapore.
Okay.
So I think that without these safeguards, people might abuse it lah.
Okay.
Yeah. And in my case, I feel that they have abused it lah.
Okay, but someone
Yeah.
might say, okay, but you won, right? And you didn't even have a lawyer. So it shows the system works. So is your problem with the fact that you had to get into that situation in the first place and then go through this extremely exhausting legal process?
Yes, 100%.
Right.
As I've mentioned, in my opinion, I wouldn't have won if I didn't have the numbers behind me. So I was in a performance-based role. It was sales and marketing.
Okay.
I had really quite good sales numbers. I was an online marketer lah, basically.
Yeah.
And my numbers were really, really good for 5 months in a row. So in my opinion, I'm doing the country a service, right? Like same input, you get higher output. So that's productivity, right?
Okay.
But why did I have to even end up in that situation where there's this legal case and I have to go back and forth with HR? Why can't we just get along and maybe for senior management to say like, hey, he's doing a good job, let's keep him, instead of having all this. I mean, to me it was political issues within my team, within the HR department. It wasn't handled well, and it ended up in a legal battle. Mm-hmm. So it's not ideal for anyone, not just me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now you've got your own digital marketing company for law firms, threelittlepigs.pro, which is a really interesting a name or a website. That's the URL, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And what are the in general, what are the changes you'd like to see in terms of legislation, in terms of protection for workers? Can you give us some concrete examples based on your own experience, based on your research? Right, and now as an employer yourself, right, do you feel like your position has changed, your experience has changed your perspective on this? Okay,
so I think in early this year, the government actually introduced a couple of workplace fairness bill, and it does address certain aspects of what I went through. So number one, now all employer and employee grievances have to be documented in a more formal manner, right? Mm-hmm. And this is regardless whether you are on probation or you're full-time staff. Right. So I think the government has taken some steps, but then again, there should be more steps taken.
Such as?
You can't extend someone's probation. There has to be a limit. There has to be a limit, and there
more
has to be more definite, and there has to be paperwork involved as well. Like the employee has to agree to sign. Okay, I'm willing. I understand that you guys want to extend me for certain reasons. I agree. I sign. Right. For my case, it was there was no black and white lah. It was quite grey, and this is why I had It was very interesting, right? Because I actually submitted my resignation, right? And the government agency actually listened to me to explain, and I explained why I submitted my resignation. So and they did take into account that even though I'm the one that submitted that I resigned, there was a case behind it. Yeah. So I have to give them their props, and even within our legal system, the law does account for that as well.
Okay.
Like indirect reasons. Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, back to what we were talking about. Yeah. So we should have more legislation, such as as employer, you can't just suka, just okay lah, forever you're on probation. Then it doesn't make sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. the obvious response the government will give, like obviously, like the famous, workers on the back of lorries, is that more regulation will increase the burden for employers, right? And this is very seductive because nobody likes paperwork, And as someone who owns a company in the UK, there are way more worker protections, but there's also way more paperwork, and I find it exhausting, and I spend a lot of time on paperwork and having to document everything. So it's very seductive to me as a business owner to go, okay, do we need so many regulations, so many laws, I can't follow it, I just want to make money, I'm just creating jobs, right? So for all the business owners out there, like how would you pitch something like this? Obviously for workers as well, right? But like, give us a bigger picture of the sort of worker-employer relationship that you'd like to see in Singapore.
Okay, ultimately, I mean, now I'm in the position of, an employer as a business owner. I can understand where the tauke's are coming from. So what we want is to have a win-win relationship, right? When you have a healthier relationship with your employee, be it foreigners or Singapore, I think that in the longer scheme of things, that adds to your business as well. There's a value add to your business, because when you have a healthy relationship, you have safeguards, legislation, if you will. The employee feels protected. They'll be happy to come to work, produce for you. You make more money, right? And it's a win-win relationship. So that's how I would pitch it to the employers. And I think with Singapore, we have a huge presence of foreign workers in Singapore. So I think that, the government has also taken the position that we need these foreign workers, right? Especially, and even so in the PMET workforce, not just the blue-collar ones. So I think that there needs to be some safeguards. I think the government has responded as well. That's the reason why they introduced the Workplace Fairness Bill. And it's quite technical as well. There's other things that they cover. You can't discriminate based on gender, race, marital status, and pregnancy status, and all this. So actually, the government has actually stepped in with more so-called legislation, if you will. It used to be guidelines, but now it's legislation. Okay. Yeah. So my pitch to that the segment that they were speaking about, I think it will work out as a win-win thing in the long run, because there is a huge foreigner workforce presence in Singapore. We can't avoid that.
Yeah, of course, yes. Yeah. I think though that the where some people might lose, I think workers will understand, right? We want a fairer deal, but where employers you might lose them is, well, how does making my employees happier earn me more profits? It sounds like you're pitching that, okay, we should have a better relationship with employees, and then that makes you more money. But as this horrible world has shown us, the richest people in the world become the richest people in the world by exploiting people, by underpaying people, right? Look at Jeff Bezos and Amazon. He was the second richest man in the world. He treats his employees horribly. He's still filthy rich. I think we need something more than just saying we are going to have good profits, right? I think that what we really need is a change in how we conceive of society, from one where making money is the ultimate goal to one where societal good is the ultimate goal, and we de-emphasize profits. But that requires an entire mentality change, sort of back to the 60s when we were building Singapore. We were all in it together. But then from the 80s, it became, profits are the most important thing. Growth is the most important thing. Neoliberalism, right? Measure the value of everything through the economic value of it, right? Which is a mentality that's destroying the world, right? So, but it sounds, your pitch went from, let's have a better relationship with employees, and then you make more profits. I don't see that. You see where I'm coming from?
I think that people are driven by self-interest, so you have to appeal to people's self-interest first before you appeal to.
Isn't that very shallow though? People also self-interest is not just profits. My self-interest, why do I do what I do, and even though it's not making me money, it's because I want to create a better world, not just for me but for my son, right? I want the world to not burn up because of the climate crisis, and if the climate crisis is driven by consumption, it's driven by economic production. So we need to have less of it.
Actually, 100%, I agree with you. I would like to share like quite a personal story I experienced recently. You will be surprised that actually people who are in the richer segment are actually concerned about these issues themselves.
Yeah.
Higher order needs, if you will. And personally for me, it was someone who is staying in the Holland Bukit Timah GRC that actually contributed to my personal political donation fund, the biggest amount. Yeah, so I mean, for me, I take the stance that let's appeal to people's interests first. But I would say that the richer segment of society, they are concerned. I think they can see 2, 3 steps, 4 steps ahead. And one of my team members also feedback that it is, when they walk the ground, they say it is the rich people that vote opposition. And when I got the donation, I was so surprised. Because people would think like, oh, it's actually not the downtrodden that would vote opposition. But it's actually the richer segment of society that perhaps, for me, I feel that if I were in their position, I'd be like, okay this economic model, the current one, can't go on, right? Can't go on. So I was actually quite surprised. So yeah, I think people are concerned, even for those business owners. And I mean, like, it's easy to point out like one, Jeff Bezos exploit people. But in my experience, in my 20s, I've worked for companies. I don't think all business owners are like that. I don't think all business owners are like that. I mean, I personally wouldn't be someone like that.
Yeah. Fair enough. So give us your big vision for society. Do you have a big vision for Singapore? What is the Singapore you would like to see? What is the ideal?
I think we can shift, I mean, to add on, I mean, we were just chatting before this interview that we have a lot of economic goodwill left by the pioneering generation. I think we should be more proactive in making a transition and going away from a middleman economy into building our own domestic capabilities in manufacturing. And if you look around the region, I think that we've been behind for decades, if you will. Taiwan has their own high-tech chips manufacturing economy, but we are just importing hot capital, if you will.
Right.
Yeah. So I think the next step, I don't have an ideal, but I think the next step, I think Singapore should really be more proactive in building up our own domestic capabilities. But that requires a certain amount of risk-taking, a certain amount of entrepreneurship, and this is actually quite related to what we just spoke about legislation. When an employee feels safe to speak out at work, so that, I mean, if someone, I mean, it's quite a realistic scenario. If someone is envious or something, they can't be so-called managed out through a lack of legislation, through abusing the lack of legislation. So when someone feels safe, it's like, okay, I'm protected by these laws and these laws. I can take the risk as an employee to speak out at work, to value add, to speak out to my boss, let's try this, let's try that. And they'll feel safer. And that adds to productivity. It's not just like, oh, we should have all entrepreneurs. Even on the employee level, we should empower employees to take risk, if you will. Yeah.
So tell us a bit about then yours and RDU's economic policy, right? That seems to be your big thing. Minimum wage?
Yeah, minimum wage.
Okay. Do you have an idea what level?
I think you have to refer to RDU's shadow budget. We've published it online.
Okay.
My specialty is whatever I've said today is actually 100% aligned with RDU's economic policies. Right. We do want to have to build up manufacturing capabilities and also to have a more balanced employer-employee dynamic. Because these are feedback that when we walk the ground, the same feedback has came up from common, ordinary Singaporeans. It's like, oh, I kena bullied at workplace, my boss foreigner lah, don't do this lah, and like they all gang up against me. It's very, very raw, if you will. Okay. Yeah.
Paid leave. How much paid leave a year are you recommending?
Paid leave.
Yeah.
Personally, for me, I think it's fine now. I think the government.
It's 2 weeks now, isn't it?
It's 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah. But of course, it shouldn't be abused, because it's not the amount of paid leave that I'm concerned about, because this is also feedback from my girlfriend who works in in big companies, big local companies.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the lack of employer-employer relationship, the lack of the balance of the employee-employer relationship that people may misuse to sort of block your paid leave, right? It's like if you
Yeah.
apply for this paid leave and they know they have
Right,
the cards in their hand, they're like, okay, I'm not going to approve.
How would you improve the employer-employee relationship? Like there's you can do regulations and legislation, but there is also intangibles like the respect, right? So, what would RDU like to see to change the basis on which we have right now, which I feel is, if I may characterize it as a very transactional relationship between the employer and the employee? How would you like to change that?
That's actually a cultural question.
Yes.
I think it will take some decades, if you will. And I think Singapore had quite good social cohesion in the 60s. I mean, I wasn't born yet, but from what I observe when I speak to my parents or anything, I think I think we have to work towards that. As to how the step-by-step, I mean, I can't answer because it requires not just, safeguards and everything. It requires even from an education level, our education policies and everything. So it's not as simple, and of course in housing as well. To give a broader answer to your question, I think that we have to put Singaporeans first. Okay. There has to be a social agreement between all Singaporeans that, hey, this is our country, we have a stake in it, and the government has to somewhat play ball and like, okay, they are born here, they have a stake in it, the male serve NS, they deserve some things before others, before maybe non-citizens. I think that would
towards a stakeholder focus rather than a shareholder focus, if I may, because a shareholder in the sense of profits focus, a stakeholder as in who's got a stake in the country and our society and who is here and going to contribute and be part of the society rather than just focusing purely on profits. Would that be a fair?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
100%. You got it.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. So, I mean, to come down to a bit of the brass tacks, though. We've talked about your vision. We've talked about what you like to see. We talked about your area, of expertise. But the fact is, even if there are massive opposition gains, you're not going to form the government.
Yes, 100%.
Right? And it's not through any fault of your own. We all know the system's unfree, unfair, and that there are, we live in a state which is authoritarian, and we're not a democracy. Okay, that means that your role is not going to be able to push forward this change as a creator, right? To use a football metaphor, you're not the one on the ball. You're not on offense. You're a defender. You have to, the role that you play, that the Workers' Party and PSP has played in Parliament the last 5 years, and that your parties have played outside of it, is more as a defender, stopping the other party from doing something really stupid and irresponsible. Or maybe not a football metaphor, right? But maybe if you think of the PAP heading in a certain direction, if you think it's the wrong direction, you need to nudge them, push them. So tell us a bit about how you do this. If you get elected in the Parliament, what would you focus on? What kind of questions would you ask? What do you see your style of engagement as, right? In Parliament right now, we have a big range. We have Leong Man Wai, very dogged. We have Pritam, more conciliatory, right? We have other backbenchers. We have James, who's more cerebral. So how do you see yourself playing this role in Parliament, and what kind of approach would you take to it?
Personally, I enjoy Leong's style, and I think he asks hard questions, perhaps not in the most refined manner, but I think people can appreciate the sincerity. Personally, I would take maybe a good combination of everyone you just mentioned, like James Lim, more facts-based, cerebral, Pritam, more political, conciliatory, and Leong, more sincere. Personally, I would say I have quite a good style, a mix of style amongst all of them. I would take a middle ground. I wouldn't be too aggressive.
You're kind of hedging though, isn't it? Like it's easy to say, oh, a bit of everything, but ultimately you're not going to be able to, like, some of these things are directly opposed to each other. Like a more cerebral style is very different from Man Wai's more folksy, man of the people, dogged style. And Man Wai, of course, and then there's the response, right? Man Wai asked the tough questions, so he gets whacked the most, right? He got insulted by how many people, like Vivian, and so he has to bear that burden, right, of being attacked in Parliament, called illiterate to his face, right? So there are trade-offs, right? I think people look at the politicians differently too, and how they position themselves. So I don't think you can just say, oh, it's a bit of everything. Who are you really? Tell the voters how are you going to represent them if you get into Parliament as one of the people who's got to stop the PAP going in the wrong direction.
Okay, I would lean towards Leong's style because I really like Leong Mun Wai as a person. I've interacted with him, and I think by putting himself on the line and asking hard questions, I think that's doing the right thing as opposition politicians. So, I mean, I'm young, but I've ran a business, I've went through the court case. I mean, if the PAP comes at me, I think I can take the hit. I hope they don't. Well, I'm a young chap, don't
come they will, come on.
Well,
this is Singapore.
Then I'm willing to take the burden. I mean, it's Parliament. I would do it. I would lean towards Leong's style, to ask the hard questions. Okay. But perhaps my style, I think I can't replicate Leong lah.
No,
I will be a lot more, not too folksy, if you will.
Yeah.
So that's how I would speak up in Parliament.
And would your focus be then on economic issues, or like what are the issues that you'd like to raise in Parliament beyond the economy? Because you're going to have a lot, you get parliamentary questions, private members' bills. You'll certainly have a lot of opportunity and power, even as opposition member, to insert yourself into the process, right? So what are some of the things you'd like to bring up in addition to, you've talked very much about the employer-employee relationship, economic issues. What are the other issues you really care about?
I think something that I and RDU both align when it comes to policy-wise, I think the housing system has to really be looked at or re-looked at. There has to be somewhat of a, like you say, it's a truck going off a cliff, right? Eventually going off a cliff. There has to be some sort of housing reset, if you will.
Yeah.
We have to scrutinize the policies. I think reset sounds like a very, it can sound like a very dangerous word, but we have to relook the policies. If not, it's just going to go off the cliff. Right. It's playing musical chairs, right?
Yeah.
Someone's going to fall eventually.
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority of flats are going to have less than 20 years left. I think 50% of flats will have less than 20 years left in their lease in 10 years' time. So we have to deal with that now. What's RDU's policy then on the housing, on the HDB time bomb?
SIRS for all.
SIRS for all.
But then it's related to an economic issue as well, right? How are you going to fund that?
Yeah.
Right. So those are, I think all the issues are intertwined in some way or form.
Okay.
We don't, and then of course we don't want the PAP to still say that opposition party raid the reserves. So there has to be a way to fix the decaying list with it being budget neutral as well.
Right.
Yeah. And of course we don't want to overburden the taxpayers as well. We don't want to raise GST or. So, I mean, like Chi has taken the position of like tax the rich and everything, and for me, I have a more balanced approach. It has to be balanced. Yeah.
Okay.
We can't just say like tax the rich or the higher income and to fund the poor. I think that's not the right way forward as well. Yeah.
Well, why not? Why is it's redistribution, right? Because inequality in Singapore is not wage driven. It's wealth driven. If you look at wages, right, the government loves to look at wages and says, oh, the inequality is not so bad. The problem is we long ago shifted more towards a society where wealth grows far faster, capital grows far faster than your wage. So the inequality in Singapore is massive when you take into account the people at the top who hold so much in terms of stocks, bonds, property, right? Fast cars, shiny watches. Why can't we take a bit of that back for redistribution because there's no capital gains tax in Singapore. There's no inheritance tax, right? These are all normal taxes. Are you saying you're not in favor of bringing those back?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that, okay, how is this inequality driven, right?
Yeah.
How did Singapore grow, in my opinion, how did Singapore grow in the last 30 years? It was through property flipping, hot capital.
Yeah.
So that, I think, drives inequality. So when it comes to importing hot capital, yes, I agree. Okay. We have to, if we give them a place to park their capital, then by all means, they have to contribute back, right? But when it comes to, let's say, local businesses, you don't want disincentivize local entrepreneurs taking the risk. Like, there's an awesome building there. I think that's a Singapore company, right? We don't want to disincentivize entrepreneurship in Singapore, local entrepreneurship where it's homegrown, have them scale to the regions around us, multi-million, multi-billion, get listed. So we don't want to disincentivize that as well. Mm-hmm. So I think there has to be, it has to be targeted. And this is RDU's position as well. Okay. We are not for taxing the rich in general, but we are taxing the ultra-rich who, perhaps come in here, buy up the good class bungalows, park capital there. Yeah, so I would say a balance.
Okay.
A balance.
So give me something concrete here. Because, okay, you brought Dr. Chi, SDP. That seems very targeted, right? Wealth tax on the top 1%. What is RDU's policy? Capital gains tax, inheritance tax, wealth tax, like what are your policies?
We have estate tax. We do propose an estate tax.
Okay.
But no capital gains tax if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to check that again. But estate tax. And of course, I think the general idea is to tax on the ultra-rich that brings in hot capital.
Yeah.
That drives inequality. Not the local entrepreneurs, not the SMEs that have potential to grow and provide jobs as well. We don't want to overburden the local entrepreneurship scene, if you will. Yeah.
Okay. How does an estate tax tax the hot capital that comes in and all that speculation?
I mean, estate is related to property, right?
Yeah.
So if they come in and buy property, the ultra-rich come in, I think it's fair for them to contribute back lah.
Okay,
yeah.
But an estate tax is an inheritance tax,
yeah.
right? So it only takes effect when they pass on, and there's a lot of ways to dodge that through, say, having your company own the estate, for example, your house you live in, or flipping your house before you pass on, and so on and so forth. I'm not an economist, so that's what I'm actually asking.
I think, well, that's why I say, like, RDU's position is not to go against the government for the sake of going against the government. I think recently they have also added on legislation to actually prevent that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
With the whole, like, a 991, with the property flipping, you can't do this, you can't do that. So as an opposition politician, we are there to poke and find the gaps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's if you don't mind, go a bit back to housing. The big question that that the big issue facing our housing is the central conflict. Is our public housing affordable for Singaporeans or an investment for retirement? Because you can't have both, right? If it's affordable, you keep the price low. If it's an investment for retirement, the price has to rise ahead of inflation. So these are mutually exclusive goals that the government is trying to do both. And with all their schemes and everything, they're just trying somehow to do both. But because of it, there's so many opportunities for people to game the system and rapidly gain wealth through flipping properties. What is RDU's position on what is your vision for public housing?
Well, I'll speak for my personal candidacy. I think CPF was created, the first purpose of when CPF was created was just for retirement needs, right? I think somewhere along the lines they got merged. I think CPF has to go back to its original purpose of just serving retirement needs, and housing has to be for housing.
Okay.
It has to be separated, because now it's so jumbled up with the 2.5% you owe here, you borrow from CPF. And then when you sell your HDB, you have to pay back the 2.5% compounded. It all gets jumbled up.
Yeah.
And then you are not sure whether you have enough for retirement, and then you don't have a place to stay. So there's so many entanglement, if you will. So personally, I think that it should be separated. CPF should be for retirement needs, medical needs. Housing is for housing.
Okay.
Yeah, I do agree that now it's not affordable. And this is statistics as well, right? Now I think it's 4.5 times to median income, and I think for international standards it should be around 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and this is published as well. This statistics is published as well.
So how would you address the whole issue of, there's that the fact is 50% of retirees do not have enough in their CPF accounts to meet the minimum sum, right? Because all their CPF is locked up in their flats. So what the government is then doing is the whole sort of, what do you call it, lease buyback or whatever, where you can pledge the value of your flat to your CPF to top it up to meet the minimum sum. But there's a lot of fear among the older generations of opposition in that, if the opposition come in, the value of my flat will collapse, and then I suddenly will have no more retirement funds, right? How would you address someone of a retiree who says, look, my whole value, my whole pension is locked up in my flat, right? If you say affordable flats, then what will I retire on?
Well, you're asking me a question that the PAP government has entangled itself in for the last 20, 30 years. The truck is, if you ask me if there's no pivot going forward, that the truck is going to fall off the cliff somewhere. Basically, from an economist standpoint, the money has to come from somewhere, right? There has to be trade-offs. The general idea is that there has to be some trade-offs. The money has to come from somewhere, and ideally, it can't come from the reserves, right? To top up for retirement adequacy, decay lease, for the government to buy back decay lease so that they have proper retirement funds, the money has to come from somewhere. And this is why I propose that we have to have real economic gains through entrepreneurship.
Okay.
Have productivity, have real productivity.
Okay.
Yes, make money, but we give you the platform to make money. Singapore gives you the platform to make money the real way, not through like property flipping and all these short-term goals. Then contribute back. Then we can fill in the trade-offs.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's my. I can't sit here and say like let's have a gigantic housing reset. That would just kill the market, and the banks is going to scream everything. I don't think that's going to happen realistically. But if the money has to come from somewhere, and we have to pivot to make that money.
Okay. Yeah. So last question, and we're almost out of time. How would you encourage entrepreneurship, and particularly SMEs in Singapore? Because the government has grown very unresponsive to SMEs, right? Because the main drivers of Singapore's economy, despite the government's own stated desire to encourage SMEs, the main drivers are NMCs, especially foreign capital, and GLCs, so the government itself. That is 50% and 1/3 of economy. 15% or less now is the rest of us. How would you encourage more entrepreneurship?
Well, as someone who has ran a business even like 5 years ago, I think the government has done an okayish job when it comes to grants portion. But I don't think that you can use grants to drive entrepreneurship. I think it's good that the government has stepped in. More can be done. But I think what you're asking is more of a cultural question. How do you get Singaporeans to want to take risks? And this issue is not just whether we should maybe change our education policies. It's also related to cost of living and housing, right? To put it simply, in a very layman term, if your teh peng costs $2, when you go to the coffee shop and your teh peng costs $2 and you're choking on a 30 years HDB mortgage as a young guy who has the intellect and has the drive, has the energy to take risks in the entrepreneurial scene, you would think twice, right? So these issues have to be addressed holistically. It's not just we should advocate for like creative thinking in school, or like we should reduce the cost of living. It's all intertwined together.
Right.
So, yeah, it's cost of living, housing, job job security, education, and culture. It's all together. Then you will have Singaporeans stepping up and say like, okay, let's do something. Let's create something of our own. And also social cohesion, national identity, homegrown businesses. Yeah, we are coming together, not just having a transactional relationship, coming together and say, let's build something of our own. So it's not a simple thing to be addressed, lah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Okay, but I think we're out of time. So thank you very much. You've been very generous with your time and taken on some very tough questions. So I really appreciate you coming here, sitting down with us. So good luck for your campaign, and I wish you all the best. And thank you again.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the interview. Thank you very much, everyone. Join us again later. We'll have more interviews on this channel, and we'll have, I think, a live stream again tomorrow. So I don't know when this is going on. We can edit that out, I guess. Sorry. Yeah, okay. So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and join us again for more interviews on Politically Speaking on TOC App and PJ Thumb. Thank you very much.
A lot of people still don't know how Singapore's parliament actually works. So here's a quick explainer, especially with the general election coming up. Singapore uses a first-past-the-post system. That means in each constituency, the party or team with the most votes wins, even if it's just by one vote. After the election, the party with the most elected MPs gets to form the government. To control parliament, they need a simple majority. That's at least 49 out of 97 seats. Once they have that, they choose the Prime Minister and form the cabinet. A simple majority equal more than half the seats. That's 49 seats in the new 97-seat parliament. But a two-thirds supermajority is 65 seats. Why is that important? Because certain laws, especially changes to the constitution, need at least two-thirds of MPs to agree. If one party holds 65 or more seats, they can amend the constitution without needing support from other parties. Laws start as bills, which are proposed and debated in Parliament. If a majority of MPs vote yes, the bill becomes law. But again, if it's a constitutional change, it needs at least 65 MPs to agree, not just 49. So your vote doesn't just decide who gets in, it also affects how much power one party has. Now you know the difference between 49 and 65 seats and why it matters. Understanding how government is formed and how parliament works helps you see why every seat matters.